I'm not taking a poll to start off how we pronounce. Is it Doer or is it Dower? What do you think? Who's a Dower?
Let's move on. Doer was the premier.
I like that. I like that. The mayor of Calgary as well. You know, you got it all. We got it all going on. It's obviously an exciting week for us because, as you know, the legislature hasn't sat very much in the last year. 4 days since early June, and now, of course, we'll be debating a caretaker budget for the next month that doesn't address any of the issues facing British Columbia, whether they be the economic issues facing the province, healthcare, public education, or the environment. I'm announcing today my team of critics for this session. As all of you know, I was elected last Sunday, so 7 days ago, and we have a session starting on Wednesday. So I have put the emphasis on stability in terms of critic roles. I would want to underline a couple of important changes I've made. First of all, the critic area that I care a great deal about, critic area where there's, and an area of government where there's a significant difference between the government and the opposition, is healthcare. As you know, Christy Clark in her leadership campaign put forward a proposal to reduce expenditures in public health care, to link expenditures in public health care to the rate of economic growth, which would lead to, if implemented this year, $517 million in cuts. The NDP has put forward significant proposals over the last number of years that would not only make the healthcare system more cost efficient, but improve services for people. I think that situation was symbolized in the leadership campaign in the last couple of months by what happened at Tim Hortons in the Royal Columbian Hospital. But really, what that reflects is what's happening every day in our public health care system. Obviously, that's going to be a key focus for the opposition in this session going into the election, and that's why I've named Mike Farnworth, former health minister, to a post that obviously I care a great deal about. Mike's going to do an outstanding job. He's going to be a lead critic on this question, and I think I'm looking forward to him taking on the new Liberal health minister, but also presenting our positive alternatives for change. I don't think there's anyone better for that. John Horgan, who did an extraordinary job, I think, in his leadership campaign, and has been a terrific spokesperson over the years. It will be the House Leader when the session starts on Wednesday. John will also keep his role as energy critic, because those are two, obviously, the issues around energy at a time when the government is hiking up hydro rates, at a time when the government's agenda of private power has been exposed as damaging to BC's economic interests. Those will be key issues for us as well. In addition, obviously, we'll be raising issues around the government's and BC Hydro's smart meter program. Those are two significant changes, I think. John and Mike are going to be, as they showed in the leadership campaign, are leaders in British Columbia. They've proven themselves to be terrific. They were terrific candidates for the leadership. They're going to be key members of my team, and they're going to be sitting to my right and to my left when the legislature opens on Wednesday. With respect to the rest of the team, we've made some significant changes, and I'll have you can ask questions about them. But mostly, for example, Claire Trevena, who is the Assistant Deputy Speaker, will be moving into into our shadow cabinet as critic for children and families. And we've made a number of other changes, which you can see. I think the differences are going to be real in this session. From a government that has, after all, now had 2 years since an election. 2 years since an election, at a time of real difficulty for British Columbia. And you cannot, as I have, travel 49 communities in the last 3 months, not to see the difficulties seen everywhere. In our public health care system, absolutely. In our public education system, absolutely. But in the economy all over British Columbia, we've had a series, a time particularly in rural BC and in the interior of BC and on Vancouver Island, of retraction in the economy. And in this period, the Liberal government has had no answers, put forward no serious proposals other than the HST, which was essentially a cruel deception of the voters from the last provincial election. It has been a government without an agenda, and we haven't really seen since then an agenda, since the new Premier became Premier, much of an agenda at all. In fact, we are going to be debating over the next month a budget that was described as a caretaker budget, a budget with no major new initiatives to address any of the major issues facing British Columbia. That's their agenda. And you're going to be able to contrast that with our positive proposals for change. Our positive proposals for change on healthcare, on education, on public services, and in particular on the economy and in the environment. And you're going to see that contrast between a government that's clearly out of gas and out of ideas, and an opposition who is ready to take them on, ready to put forward a positive agenda for people. That's the contrast you're going to see in the legislative session. Of course, we're going to be raising issues that people have been raising with us around British Columbia about the failures of the government. That's our job as opposition. But it's also our job in a time when the government has abandoned British Columbia, has failed to show leadership. It's time for an opposition to provide hope. People in BC want change, and we are going to provide them with practical change, positive change, that will make a difference in people's lives. That's their agenda, that's our agenda. Can't wait to get started.
There's one name missing from this list, Carol James.
Look, Carol,
What's she going to do?
Carol is, first of all, Carol has done an extraordinary job as leader for the last 7 years. One of the things she's going to do initially is refocus on her job as MLA for Victoria Beacon Hill. Carol is one of my closest advisors. She's going to have a very significant role on my team, and we'll be developing that as time goes on. She and I discussed this. She decided just for this session that she didn't want to take on a critic's role. We discussed it, but she's going to play a major role on my team.
So because she left open at the convention that the idea of her perhaps even stepping down, having a conversation with the new leader, and perhaps stepping down as MLA.
I think Carol is an extraordinarily valuable member. She's a close friend of mine, and she's going to play a key role for me in assisting me as I lead the caucus and the party. And I think Carol is recognized as a provincial spokesperson, not just on as leader of the opposition, but on major issues facing the province, such as the economy, such as small business, such as children in care. And she's going to play a crucial role on my team as we go forward.
So John Horgan gets pay raise and Mike Farnworth gets pay cut. Is that right?
Well, we didn't actually, any of us, we were all without critic areas. But if you're dating back to January, that.
Yeah. House leader gets a salary, an extra salary, right?
Well.
And Horgan's getting an extra salary, and Farnworth is not going back to that job, so he's effectively getting a pay cut from the last session.
Well, I think, and it's for me, I think health critic is the most challenging critic area on the opposition side.
But
it's more than 40%.
It's
more than 40% of government spending. Mike is an outstanding critic, a former health minister, and my main criteria wasn't issues like that, Vaughn. My main criteria was ensuring that we had a strong health critic to lead that fight against the BC Liberal government, and so that was my first question when I looked at on the critic side, who could be an outstanding health critic and take over and put his own or her own stamp on one of the most important ministries in government. I thought it was Mike Farnworth. He's going to be my lead critic, and he's going to do an outstanding job.
And he can't be House Leader and be Health Critic.
I think that's a big load. Remember, he's taking over as Health Critic 3 days before a legislative session, right? So I felt that was the best balance of responsibilities. Mike and John are, as you know, close friends and key advisors, and Mike's going to do a fantastic job as Health Critic.
Weren't you critic and deputy House Leader at one point?
Yeah, I was critic and deputy House Leader. Yeah,
Which also comes with a salary, doesn't it?
Deputy House Leader does not come with a salary.
I'm not
Yeah.
quite clear on why your former leader isn't ready to rejoin the team in a lesser capacity.
Oh, she is. We just decided for this session that this would be the best way to go. But she's a key part of the team, and you'll see as time passes, Carol playing a key role on my team.
Is she still Is there still a little bit of hurt involved in the past winter?
Oh, I think what there is an incredible effort on behalf of the NDP over time. And you know, it's one of the challenges that I'm going to face, which is representing my community as well as being leader of the opposition. I don't know if there are many people who care more about the job of MLA than I do. So I understand her desire in the short run to focus on Victoria Beacon Hill, but Carol has offered to assist me in any way she can, and believe me, I'll be calling on her regularly.
Adrian, have you, maybe I missed it, you haven't named the chief of staff yet?
No,
When will you be making that announcement?
I'll let you know.
Jerry Scott in the running?
No, well, Sean, you know, if you want to put your name in there, you know, if you want to put your name in there, I'm accepting resumes, so that'll be good.
Adrian, Don Black, you know, a capable interim leader, probably very good critic. How does she end up as assistant deputy speaker in a role where we're essentially never going to hear from her again?
Oh, I think it's a challenging role. I mean, Dawn really commands, and I think she'll do a good role, and I think she's excited to take on that challenge.
Is this because she's possibly thinking about not running again?
I think it's because she would be an excellent assistant deputy speaker, and I decided that I wanted Claire Trevena to play a role as a critic.
Has she communicated to you anything about not potentially running again?
You know, I've talked to Dawn. I think she's excited about taking on this challenge.
I want to be clear just about Carol James. Did she tell you, I missed the first answer, did she tell you she did not want a critic job?
Yeah, we agreed that in this session that she wouldn't
was
take on
her
a
idea?
critic role. Yes, yeah, we discussed it and talked about that in a mutual way, but she's going to play a major role, don't worry.
Are you expecting a more aggressive style from your new House leader than the previous House leader was known for?
Oh, I think the previous House leader was, who you're going to see regularly in the House, was what they used to call him. They used to call him the closer, even on the government side. He's an outstanding questioner. I think so. I don't think you'll see a more aggressive style. We're gonna present a positive alternative to the government, and we're going to hold them to account. Those are our two goals for the session. It's going to be difficult to hold them to account because, as you know, 2 years into this mandate, they still aren't proposing anything of substance. However, there are significant issues facing British Columbians out there, and we're going to be holding them to account on those issues. And so I think with John Horgan as House Leader and Mike Farnworth as Health Critic, you're going to see an energetic performance from the opposition, but we're going to be serious in holding the government to account.
Adrian, what is the implications of passing this placeholder budget? Do you buy this idea that it's got basically $1 billion slush fund contained?
Well, I think the implications are that the government has abandoned the province. I mean, remember the previous budget, the one from February 2010, which was put in place around the time of the Olympic Games. The most significant measure, aside from obviously the implementation of the HST at that time, was saying that HST revenues would go to healthcare, an idea that didn't even survive in serious discussion 1 day after the budget was over. So we had a budget in 2010 that had very little in it at a time when BC needed help. And now, again, in 2011, a budget with nothing in it at a time when BC needs response to issues. And now it's going to be, June, July, August before we hear from the government. I mean, they were elected in 2009, presumably to lead, and we've had nothing from them except inaction and, on the question of the HST, deception.
Did you have any conversations with the MLAs about whether or not they would be running in the next election? Was that part of your discussions over the past couple days?
No.
How does Gentner become public health and Farnworth health? Like, what's the difference?
Well, there's a series of public health. There's a public health portfolio within the Ministry of Health, and Guy will be leading that discussion. That's closely linked with issues of sport and fitness and healthy living. Previously, that had been there'd been a ministry of that, and it really Guy will be responsible for those elements of the Ministry of Health that were in that ministry. Obviously, Mike is going to be the lead critic on all those issues.
When will we hear from you on some of the major staffing announcements?
As soon as I know.
How do you
Well,
reconcile the,
we
Baker's
do have a session, as you know, coming up, and one would assume that having a staff, chief of staff, and all these other positions that need to be filled would be an important part of getting ready for that session.
And it is an important part, and unfortunately, although I think a permanent camera in the leader's office would be very exciting, because I think no one could accuse me of being dour, because I skip and I dance, I do all kinds of things, but it won't be there. But as soon as we have that, we'll let you know.
How did you decide about the so-called the Baker's dozen, where they fit into your critics' roles?
Well, there's only one caucus and one caucus team, and everybody's represented on that team here, and so I don't make those distinctions.
Guys, we have to head into a meeting soon, so
Is there
last
any
questions?
comment on the federal NDP's rise in the polls, Adrian? What do you expect on today?
Well, I'm not going to do. I noticed the BC Liberals yesterday were tweaking that the Canucks hadn't won since I was elected leader. In fact, of course, they won the night I was elected leader, and I'm not saying that there's a link between those two things.
They hadn't heard about it.
Is that right?
Yeah.
No, I think they were talking about in the locker room between the second and third period. I distinctly heard that after the game. But you'll have to check. You'll have to check with your sports team over there. But so I won't make the link between my election as leader and the rise of the NDP's fortunes in the federal election. I won't do anything like that. It's going great out there. I've been canvassing, in the federal election. I've done a little canvassing in Vancouver Point Grey as well. And I think the public response to Jack Layton's message is extraordinary. Everywhere I go, I've been in Surrey. I've obviously been in Vancouver Kingsway in the last few days. I think what Jack Layton's doing is presenting a real alternative to Canadians, and they're responding well. You've seen him rise in the polls certainly by more than 10 points. And so our challenge as New Democrats in the next week will be to ensure that that success in the polls is realized at the ballot box. And I think it's very, very positive here in BC and obviously in other provinces. I'm delighted with how well Jack's performing. And I have to say that, I saw Jack Layton in the first week of the campaign, and you're talking about a leader of honesty and forthrightness. You're also talking about someone with enormous courage, and he's shown that in this campaign. And I think that's what Canadians are looking for in their leaders and in their Prime Minister. And so I'm very positive about how Jack's doing.
How many seats do you think the Federal Party will win in BC?
Oh, I wouldn't want to make predictions. That's not my business. I used to write for a paper in Victoria. The name will come to me. The Times columnist. That's the one. And so I used to do things like make predictions. For example, President John Kerry in particular felt that my predictions were better than really anyone else's. French President Ségolène Royal the same. So I think I'll leave the predictions to you experts.
Thanks,